Hello, I'm Rachel Richards, former BBC correspondent, parenting coach, mother of 2 teenagers and 2 older stepdaughters.
Hi, I'm Susie Asley, mindfulness instructor and mother of 3 teenagers, 2 of them being twins.
Now, before we begin, I just wanted to welcome all of our new listeners. Susie, you know we are now being downloaded in 65 different countries.
What?
I know. And a big hello to the large proportion of new parents who are in Dublin, Cape Town and Sydney, New South Wales.
Amazing. Welcome.
Yes, welcome. Coming up, we are going to chat about activities we can do with our teens that everybody might enjoy. But first, pornography. There's nothing new about it. It's existed throughout recorded history. I mean, hundreds of sexually explicit frescoes and sculptures were found in the ruins of Pompeii. But since the advent of the internet, porn availability and use has skyrocketed. Now, a few figures. In 2019, the world's largest pornographic website, Pornhub, which is a kind of YouTube for porn, boasted of an almost unbelievable 42 billion individual visitors, averaging more than 115 million visits per day.
Wow, that's a huge number.
It's just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And that's just one of the free websites amongst thousands that host this material. Surveys of adults in the United States have found that 46% of men and 16% of women viewed online pornography in the past week. Surveys of US adolescents found that 68.4% report exposure to online pornography. Now, I didn't see a number and age for that, no. So, now, we hand our kids phones and computers and they connect to the internet. Some of them as young as 8 or whatever age. And if we're diligent, we set up careful barriers to access. But let's be honest, they will soon work out how to get around them. Or, your teen might be introduced to things you don't like by other teens forwarding material or gaining access because their parents aren't as careful. So you can't stop it.
No.
I mean, it's all out there. So what's the impact? Now, according to Peggy Orenstein in Boys and Sex, the boys she interviewed access porn regularly and found in real life, she calls it IRL sex, which it took a while to understand, is in real life sex, hard to reconcile with those of the online porn they were viewing.
Yeah.
And in a US survey, boys were found to be 3 times more likely than their fathers to have watched hardcore featuring triggering themes like BDSM, gang rape, and double penetration. The boys then ended up worrying about the size of their penises and about whether they'd be able to perform the acts that they saw online. And then when they tried the acts that they'd seen online on a partner, they were often filled with shame and regret because they didn't actually work out the way they thought they were going to work out. Because the problem is, of course, these people are acting.
Yes. It's because as you say, pornography's been around since time began, but it's in such a different format now that it's a totally different world.
Different world.
Looking at a picture, which is one thing, but then seeing something graphic is another.
And I think when they're young and they don't have any context, that this is their first experience. Because one of the things that Peggy Orenstein pointed out was that most boys will be accessing pornography because they seek it out.
Yeah.
Because, it doesn't matter who you are, boy, girl. If you hear a word and you think, oh, what's that? And then you type it into a search engine, which actually happened to one of my children, this is completely innocent because they just didn't know what it meant. And yet suddenly you're confronted with things that you really are not ready for.
And I think it's really important to differentiate between normal curiosity, which every child and adult has. It's sexuality is exciting. It's exciting to explore it. What is it? What's going on? How do we do it? Looking at different bodies is exciting. That's totally normal. And
fun.
Then and fun, yeah. And at the other end is then being confronted by, hardcore porn, which can be violent, toxic, have so much, strangeness to it that's not normal. And differentiating between the two, we don't want to stop the curiosity and the fun part. We want to protect and take care of the stuff that maybe is toxic and damaging them.
Absolutely. So the problem we've got is we've got access to material. And what do we do about it? Just in terms of some of the other things to unpack, what's worse is that some of the boys that were accessing this pornography were struggling to get excited by their real life partners, because what they'd done is they'd been searching for, through these search engines, you can refine your searches for this very specific things about bodies that you find attractive. And then the person you happen to be with doesn't have that thing.
Yeah.
And then it's not attractive. So, and because it rewires your whole feedback mechanism in your brain.
Yeah.
Also, Peggy Orenstein said that in terms of consent, well, all the boys she interviewed understood the need for consent. Many admitted to watching porn where the female actor resisted or was coerced before succumbing in pleasure. And actually, for the girls that I've spoken to, and I've got stepdaughters who are in their 20s now, so we feel more comfortable talking about sexuality and porn, and it can be really off-putting because they don't want this stuff done to them.
No.
It becomes a kind of, I'm going to have to protect myself from some disgusting thing that these boys might experiment on me, and that's not what we want. We want our teenagers to take great joy in giving pleasure to somebody else. And it doesn't have to be penetration.
No. And I think if we can have conversations with our children, however awkward it is, about it, and, you know, emphasize that pornography that they watch isn't a normal relationship. It's a show. It's a money making thing, and it's graphic, and it's often violent, and not a normal relationship. And a normal relationship and a sexual relationship between two people is either, you know, fun based, or it's hopefully for them, you know, in the future, between two people who really love and care for each other, and it's a really beautiful thing. It's not just a physical act. And I think the idea that, you know, sexuality is something that we have to be, you know, weird and funny about is so unhelpful. It's a beautiful thing.
And I was talking to my girls recently because there was a man that I'm on Twitter. I follow a lot of writers, and he writes romance, which is unusual for a man. And someone said to him, why? And he said, well, what's better than falling in love?
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, you know, that's such an interesting point he's making. And why are we not talking more often about love and how beautiful it is to love somebody, whether it's your friend or your partner, and, you know, just celebrating love so much more.
Yeah.
We don't talk enough about it.
No.
It just ends up being reduced into something sexual, which is so depressing.
Yeah, something sexual and something that, you know, we have to be really careful about.
Yes.
And, you know, sex education is about not getting pregnant. And, and, you know, well, how about we talk about how beautiful it is and how wonderful it is? And yes, of course, let's be careful and do the things we need to do to take care of ourselves. But let the starting point be that the beautiful side of it, and let sex be an organic part of something loving rather than an add-on.
Yes. And what, interestingly, when I was doing this research, the one thing that really struck me was when I was thinking about non-binary adolescents and how actually for them this could be a wonderful outlet, because being able to explore your sexuality in a safe environment where you haven't got prying eyes of your community checking you out, I can see that would be a really positive thing. So it's not all negative.
No.
And being able to feel safe and comfortable doing that is good, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will remain safe, because of course there are online predators and things, you know, so it does have to be couched in those terms.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's, you know, curiosity, finding out, normalizing it for people who are, you know, trans or, you know, different.
Yes, because I read that one trans person was saying the problem is when you're an adolescent and you start thinking, well, how does this work? How do I have a relationship with somebody? How am I supposed to have sex? Because all they hear about is penetrative sex, and we need to sort of start talking about other ways of showing romantic and loving sexual, you know, giving someone pleasure that isn't just about what you're seeing in pornography.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know how I love my science. So I did a little bit of digging around on the science side. And what I thought was interesting was a website which is called fightthenewdrug.org. And the reason I liked them was because you can see this information in other places, but they described it so beautifully. And you can show it to your teen. So teenage neuroplasticity in our brains, we talk about this all the time because it's the biggest neuroplastic time of your life, adolescent years. Yeah. And our brains are brilliant because they will rewire and adapt to whatever we try and do that's positive. So deep inside that brain is the reward center, and its job is to release the pleasure chemical called dopamine, which we've talked about a lot in our screen and our
social media
stuff, because that they work on all those feedback, the positive feedback loops.
Hits.
So the dopamine comes out in response to behaviors that we perceive as positive. So, and the dopamine says, hey, brain, let's do some more of this because it really feels good. So the brain rewires around that and triggers you need to do more of it. Okay, so it's very clever, but porn releases massive amounts of dopamine in the same way that a drug would release a massive amount of dopamine for people who are accessing it and it's pleasurable.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it?
Yes, and it floods the brain with these feelings of pleasure. And so the brain starts rewiring around it. And it will then create an endless feedback loop if you're not careful, because you will then have to seek that out again.
Yes.
And at the same time that this is happening, the prefrontal cortex, which we've talked about before, which you know a lot about.
Yeah.
And what is it in a teenager?
Well, it's just not really fully formed, particularly for the boys. I don't think it's fully formed until they're 25.
Yeah. And so these are the people who are the biggest users of porn.
Yes.
So in the prefrontal cortex, the job is to actually put the brakes on this dopamine feedback loop, you know, because what it does is it looks and goes, actually, that's not good for me.
Yeah. And so that's why teenagers take loads of silly risks, because it's not formed, particularly the boys, which in the context of looking at dangerous porn is not a good combination.
Yes. And we'll come on to why there is dangerous porn.
Yeah.
Because that's actually, when we say dangerous porn, you know, sort of really graphic, unpleasant things. What it can do is dysregulate that feedback system. So the reason this is important is it can actually cause problems with getting arousal with a partner. If they've had to access porn to get that hit, then when they're with somebody, they don't get it. They're not going to get any kind of happiness out of it. So that's really sad.
It is really sad. It's the same as any stimulant, really, isn't it? The more you use it, the more you need.
Yes, absolutely. And studies show that changes in the transmission of dopamine can also facilitate depression and anxiety, which we know is such a massive problem now in our society. Compulsive porn users find themselves wanting and needing more porn. And it doesn't always happen in the same way that everybody responds differently to things. So some people might try a cigarette and they just say, nah, I'm not interested. Some people start smoking and they find it easy to give up. And some people are instantly hooked. So you will get people who respond differently.
Yeah, and that can be chemically based, can't it? But it can also be, you know, any addiction is filling a need, filling a hole. And if you have that particular way, then watching loads of porn might be really appealing, and maybe then it's really difficult to stop.
If they're watching it and they're finding it unpleasant, but they still feel the need to go back, that's a key example of dysregulation, where you now are in a feedback loop that's unpleasant and not helpful. Yeah. Pornhub analytics reveal that conventional sex is decreasingly interesting to users and is being replaced by themes like incest and violence.
Gosh, that's interesting.
It's really interesting. And psychiatrist Norman Doig, I think that's how you pronounce it, explains when pornographers boast that they're pushing the envelope by introducing new, harder themes, what they don't say is that they have to, because their consumers are building up a tolerance to the content.
Yeah, which is really scary, isn't it, when we're talking about our teenagers, because then they're seeing these things that are not normal and it's being normalised. So then, as you say, they go out into the world and they expect to find that, and that's not what they find. And then that leads to all sorts of problems with their partners.
Shame.
And shame.
And the problems with the sexual functioning, and even just being able to connect with the person because they don't think that person looks the way that they should look.
Or they get, massive insecurities about the way they look, because not everybody looks like somebody in a porn movie.
Exactly. But also, I mean, coming back to the incest thing, I had the most disturbing conversation with a woman, it must have been at least 10, if not, 10 years ago, say, it was just a mother who was a policewoman, and she said, we are seeing increasing amounts of young adolescents coming in who have committed incest, and they don't even know that what they've done isn't right.
Gosh, that's shocking.
Yeah. And so for me, that was one of those moments when I just gasped and I thought, gosh, what are we doing by not having conversations about these things with our adolescents? We need to get on top of this.
Yeah, because it's the conversation, as in all the topics we cover, it's the conversation that matters. It's how we approach it at home, so that they know that it's not normal. Is so helpful. They need to know that.
And I think framing it in the sense that saying, okay, this is the number of people who are accessing this. So we're not saying you're not a bad person. No. You're doing what a lot of people are doing. Here are the problems with it in terms of how it's going to affect you.
Yeah, because we don't want them to feel shameful. We want them to feel the opposite. We want our teenagers to feel amazing about their bodies and amazing about their sexuality. We don't want them feeling wrong for it.
No.
And I think particularly maybe in the culture we have here is we're a bit, we don't really like talking about sex, do we here?
And that's why I think the thing to do is come at it with numbers and science, because that removes the ick. The discomfort, I think. It always does for me when I'm talking to my children. If I'm very matter of fact about it and say, okay, so here's what's going on with the rest of the world. Let's just talk about, and we can say, you don't have to say, are you doing this? So if you're going to have a conversation with the teen is never going to bring this up. They're not going to come to you and say, hey mom, hey dad, I've just been watching this porn, what do you think? They're not going to say that. So you have
probably
to,
not. No.
Yeah, so you have to find it in yourself, dig deep and find the opportunity, not once either. It needs to happen on any opportunity you can find, maybe even a car. When you're driving somewhere, you're not having to look each other in the eye, or when they're just about to leave and you can just have a quick, just short bursts so
and with
that they don't feel trapped.
The presumption, the presumption that if they haven't seen it, they will, and if then that it's that side of it's normal. That's normal curiosity. But let's have a conversation about it and remind them that the sex that they see in porn is not normal, most of it, and having a loving relationship. So, coming from a science point, I think that's brilliant. Biology, it's biology, a lot of it, but also from a feelings perspective, how do you want to feel with somebody?
I love that. Yes.
How do you want to,
that's the mindfulness one.
That's the mind, or awareness of how do you want to feel. Let that be your guide. Never doing something you feel uncomfortable with, and giving them, the confidence and the awareness to, if somebody has seen something in porn that they want to do and they think that's normal and it doesn't feel good, being able and confident enough to go, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't feel good. That feels awful. But you have to have an awareness of what feels okay and not okay as a starting block.
Yes, I love that. And also if they say, no, but everybody's doing it, you say, well, no, they're not, because I'm not.
Yeah.
And that, it might be that way in porn, but that's not real. You can say that. Look, you might have seen that somewhere, but actually that's not real life, or it's not real life for me. So if you have to say I'm not the right person for that, then that's fine.
Because it's hard as a teen. It's hard. But, it's really important.
Talking to them about how a porn video works. It revolves around a flimsy plot and a premise that quickly leads to sex. The focus is almost exclusively on male pleasure. It's often rough, different positions. These men have stamina. And the woman climaxes immediately, or almost immediately, and she's having the best time ever.
Such
and
real life.
It's like that for me every night.
Oh yeah.
Most porn actors are muscly and well endowed. Well, or they're not, and that's okay. But the women have to be gorgeous.
Yeah.
And the poor girls who see this and think, oh, what's wrong with my vulva because it doesn't look like that, or my
they
breast,
have to shave
my hair.
It's completely unnormal. And also the idea, the dark side, which is huge in the porn world, that a lot of, particularly the women, are they're pretty much sex slaves. Yeah. It's hideous. It's so toxic.
Yes.
It's not real life in any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about the things that you might find awkward to talk about, but that actually really, really help. So masturbation, for example, boys talk about it freely. They're all at it. Girls barely talk about it ever.
Yeah.
I tried to have a conversation with my daughter about it a while back, and she was like, "Oh, Mummy, that's disgusting." And I said, "I don't know, why is it disgusting? I mean, you need to understand how your body works and make yourself happy." And and I tried to, and I thought, well, maybe she's a bit young, but I will go back there.
Yeah, but the emphasis being on that our bodies are beautiful and they feel nice, and celebrating that rather than making it weird.
But talking to them about how it's actually really like, go behind your door in your bath or in your shower or whatever and have a go without porn. So teaching your teenagers to find pleasure in their bodies without, because the problem is if you're always reliant on pornography to get you to that space, then that's when the dysregulation starts to happen. So you need to have a conversation with them about sexual desires and the range of things that can give pleasure that are not penetration.
And I think it's starting small as well, and it all depends on our own how comfortable we are talking about sex at all, and doing it in a way that feels comfortable. So you don't have to sort of go jump in head first if that doesn't feel good, because they'll pick up on that immediately and it will just be weird for everybody. And also, I mean, I have 2 boys and I parent alone. I'm not sure they'd want to talk about masturbation with me. But I'm pretty sure how that conversation would go. But I could, I can, I can, model that a body is a beautiful thing, that it's, that it's energy, isn't it? It's energy, and it's enjoying ourselves.
But I also think that it can feel awkward, and the best person to give the talk is the person who feels least uncomfortable about it. But it's also, rather than saying you or I, if you say, this is what most people, this is what we're seeing from the statistics, this is how, so if you take it away from the house and away from the family and you just talk about it in generic terms, it's much less uncomfortable. And also, just if they say, so what do? You just say, it's not really appropriate for me, in the same way that it's not appropriate for me to ask you detailed questions about what you're doing. I don't want to pry, but I want to talk about it in general terms. And
from a feelings perspective.
How
do you want to feel? How do you feel about it? That's really, really good starting point.
So the other thing that's really important to stress is delaying exposure as long as possible, because the average age that kids lose their virginity is between 15 and 17, but kids as young as 8 have been given laptops and phones. And the later they're exposed, the better, because the longer they've had to develop their prefrontal cortex and their understanding of love and affection and, just sexuality. So tips for that are really things like keeping computers and devices in a public place, downstairs, in the kitchen or wherever, and, minimizing the amount of time they're in their room with it.
But I mean, also the understanding that they are going to be exposed to it. They are going to watch it, instead of, resisting that.
Absolutely.
And delaying it. Yeah, sure. If you can do that, brilliant. But because you can't unsee what you've seen, can you?
Exactly.
But that they will be exposed to it. So having the conversations and getting
so they can frame
understand.
it. Yes. And also not overreacting. So I've seen instances where, this mother walked in on her son with some quite aggressive porn, and she was really upset and overreacted. And she said, I know I've overreacted and I don't know what to do. It's really important that if we discover our teenager doing this stuff again, that we need to be able to sit down and have a conversation about it that's non-shaming, because shaming actually sends them more down that route. Because they feel so bad and they think there's something wrong with them. But also, just don't assume anything. They may have been sent this stuff by someone else. And actually, the stuff that gets, when my husband was at school, they used to pass around, whoever brought in the magazines, they were, kudos. And they'd pass the pictures around. And so, what happens is usually the most extreme stuff that they're passing around. Can you see this? So if you catch your teen looking at something that's outrageous, don't assume.
I think shame is such an important thing to mention here, because if shame comes into it, which it often does in our society when we talk about sex, we're not that comfortable about talking about sex. So we're often shamed into it, and that means that the conversation is shut down. But maybe more importantly, it leaves the teenager or the person you're talking to with horrible feelings that there's something wrong with them, or there's something wrong with sexuality, that it just frames it in a really, really bad way. So not shaming them, it's normal. And if we encounter something that we find difficult to watch, or we want to talk to our teen about it, but we don't really know how to approach it, I find it really useful just to ask questions. Like, if I don't know what to say,
great tip. Yes.
I don't know what to say, ask questions. So why are you watching that? Just any facts, anything. What do you like about it? Anything. And that just sort of, it opens the conversation as opposed to shutting it down, and then can lead you into having a proper conversation about it.
And when it comes to things like non-binary sexuality, the way that we can help both cis children and those people who are moving in those other directions is by stressing that, these norms of boy, man, girl, man penetrating woman and woman on her back, or whatever it is, are only one way of a massive universe of making someone feel lovely.
Yes.
So what I think it's a brilliant point you're making about how do you feel, And that, for people who are exploring their sexuality, there are so many different ways of feeling good.
Yeah.
Please don't limit yourself. And don't think that by talking about it, you're going to encourage them to be more sexual. What will actually happen is they will be more in tune with themselves and more likely to be more careful about the experiences they have, because they'll be treasuring, how am I feeling?
Yeah, they'll be more considered in whatever they do. They'll be more thoughtful.
Yeah, I think that's always the fear. It's the fear, if I talk about it, then I'm condoning it, and then they're going to go and do it more. But actually what they're finding is people who are accessing porn tend to have riskier behaviour because it's not contextualised, and they're getting the sense that everybody's doing this all the time and this is the way they're behaving. And they're more likely to be sexting, and they're more likely, because they'll go, well, everyone's doing it. Yeah,
no, talking about it doesn't make it more. It's the opposite.
No. When to get help? If you've got a teenager who's avoiding making connections and developing any romantic relationships in real life, it might be worth looking into whether they've developed some kind of problem because of accessing porn. Who knows? If your child seems to be spending an inordinate amount of time with their laptop in their room, and it might be worth actually broaching the subject of online porn and whether they have got trapped in a cycle, because these things can be fixed. But the sooner that you get in some help and you get them understanding that they're not broken, that they just need some support, the better. If your child is quite young but starts talking about porn, you may well need to step in, because this could be a groomer. They'll show them things that they're not ready for, to see what their reaction is, to sort of prime them.
Yeah, that's really important.
It's really important to look out for that. So if you suddenly realise that your child's being a bit more sexual, or they're saying, it's worth just finding out whether something's going on there.
Yeah. But the whole time that with the talk of porn, having the context of it's natural, it's curiosity, they're exploring, let's make it fun, and taking care and normalizing the normal stuff and abnormalizing the abnormal stuff, and they're aware of that.
Yeah. Have you discovered your teenager using porn? I really recommend using the Culture Reframed website, which I have got in the podcast notes, for getting as much information as possible on how to navigate it and how to discuss it with your teenager. I also came across a really interesting blogger, and she now has an Instagram account, and she has a book out, and she goes by the moniker of La La La, Let Me Explain.
Great name.
Yeah, it's all about consent and about, how to look out for the people who aren't very nice and aren't going to treat you well, and to avoid them, and how to find the people who are, genuinely looking for connection, that wonderful word that you always use.
Yeah, and consent always starts with knowing yourself and an awareness of what's okay and what's not okay. If we don't know that, then it's really hard to judge.
Yes, and it's hard to say no, because you're thinking, well, I don't know what I... So we'd love to know if you have any other things you'd like us to cover. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and help@teenagersuntangled.com. And if you need any help with mindfulness techniques, then Susie's always available for online consultations as well as in person. Now, we've had a lot of parents saying that even when they're at home with their teens, they're struggling to find things to do together that everyone will enjoy. So we thought we'd talk about our own experiences. The joyous, happy, lovely times we have with our teenagers.
Yeah, every day.
Dancing through the meadows with wildflowers. And we've had some great feedback from some of our listeners.
Yeah.
So we do actually have a Facebook page. It's a group, so just ask to join it. And, it's not very active, but, occasionally there'll be people giving advice, and it's very useful to connect with people. So we've had Sarah, who said she really enjoyed walking with her family. And that's very much the case with me. And it goes in fits and starts. So sometimes we're all really, really keen, and then we're walked out. And actually dragging them out to do it can be hard sometimes. But I've got the All Trails app. I really recommend it. It's fantastic, because I think it covers the whole world, because I've been in France and used it. And it will show you paths that you've never thought existed. And in fact, I found paths around my house during lockdown using this app, which have changed our life, and my dog walks. And given me some variety that I just didn't know existed. So it's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I have a word I use, it's nudging.
It's perfect, yes.
Because I find with my lot, sometimes they don't really want to do stuff. So, for example, this weekend, I wanted to go to the Bluebell Woods with, my eldest was away, and me and my partner wanted to go to the Bluebell Woods. They're stunning around here. And my two 14-year-olds were like, meh. not sure I really want to do that. And so I really nudged them, which meant that I kind of made them, but in a sort of gentle pushing, come on. We took cakes.
Snacks? Oh, cakes. Perfect. Just take bribes.
Partner bought a lot of cakes, and we sat in the woods. And when we got there, it was brilliant, which it often is. So there's the kind of the nudging to get them there and knowing they're going to enjoy it. And they were climbing trees, running around like kids. It was lovely. And then we ate a lot of cake. But then, some days the nudging, you can feel when you're nudging them. Some days the nudging is like, okay, and you can feel that there's a chink, and you nudge a bit more and they go and it's lovely. And then some days there's like, no, I really don't want to go. So the following day we went to the craziest festival ever, which I highly recommend, called Jack in the Green down in Hastings.
Which is the south of England, for anybody. It's actually where there was a big battle that went on. Yeah.
What happens is they're releasing Summer, and everyone's dressed in green, and there's Morris dancing, and it's mental, but really, really good fun. My youngest boy wanted to go, so we took him down. My daughter was like, no, I really don't want to go. I'm really tired, and that looks really weird, and I don't want to go.
And was she right or wrong?
Oh, she was completely right, and I loved it. But she, you could feel that was not nudgeable, and I respected that.
And that was not her thing.
Yeah, not her thing. So she didn't have to come to that. So it's picking the nudging moments.
Yes.
And also bringing to the whatever you want to do, whether it's playing a game, making cookies, going for a walk, going on an expedition, whatever it is, making sure that you're bringing a good energy.
Yeah.
Because I've found that if I'm not doing that, which happens, it's not fun for anyone. No. And then no one wants to do it again. And it's just, you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. We ought to be doing something together as a family.
Yeah.
And it's not fun. So bringing an energy, and if you can't muster up an energy that day, then don't do it.
Don't try it. Yes. Wait until, yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And it's always me who has to bring the energy. And I sort of bounced my husband into a festival on the Isle of Wight, and we've never been to festivals. He's not a festival man at all. I've been to Reading Rock Festival. It was the worst day of my life. Not of my life, but it was the worst day of my adolescence, I think.
Oh.
And it's just it's horrible. It's just horrible. It's just because I felt agoraphobic, claustrophobic. I felt that I was surrounded by people taking drugs, and I didn't like the music. And if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. No. But I went to this festival because there were several bands that we all said, yeah, we really like that band. It was such a fantastic time, and I think the sunshine helped. And my daughters have since talked about it many, many times, and they saying, we're festival girls now, we want to go to more festivals. And it really, really worked. Now, it's not the cheapest thing, but it's an easy way for your whole family it's a cheaper way of going and seeing a band than it is going to see the individual bands, because it's about all the other stuff. And we dressed up in crazy outfits, and it's just great. So yes, trying to, whoever is in the family who might say, well, that's not my thing, you never know. No. And coming on to that, the games, family games,
and it's the enthusiasm, isn't it? So whatever you bring, whether it's games or a festival, if you're enthusiastic about it, they might think you're a nutcase, which my kids usually do. Or, just dancing in the kitchen. If you're enthusiastic about it, it's contagious.
Yeah.
They might think, put a thumb and a finger on the, the loser thing, which I often get. But it's kind of, they're like, oh, let's join in a little bit.
Yes.
And we play games sometimes.
When I was younger, when I was a teenager, I remember wandering around the house going, oh, somebody play cards with me. Will somebody play cards? And nobody wanted to play cards with me. So that stuck in my mind. And then later, I was at a very wealthy person's house, and the kids were all playing board games. I think they were playing Risk, and I thought, oh, this is what rich people do. And so I thought, when I grow up, I'm going to play board games. and so my family have been stuck with this attitude. So they aren't a game family, or they weren't a game family until I married into it. And I sort of bounced everyone into playing games at Christmas, and it's now become a big thing. So our favourite games for people who might be interested are things like Perudo, Monopoly Deal, Monopoly generally, Ludo. Caton apparently is fantastic.
I don't know that one. I don't know that one.
Well, we tried it, and then it wasn't that great. And then I've spoken to some parents who said, I'm meeting up with some other friends, we're going to play Caton. So these are adults.
Yeah.
So the kids love it so much, and the parents love it. That's got to be a win.
Yeah. My kids often like I'm going to look up Caton. My kids often like the classic, the traditional ones that that they know the rules to, and that they can do, so that there's not too much. I mean, they're up for playing a more complicated.
I'll play a game, but I don't want to learn anything.
No, exactly. I want to just sit here and win, and beat you.
Yes. And I think there's one called the Game of Great Britain.
Oh,
I think I might be
brilliant.
Oh, you love that? Well, I love that because you get members of the family who completely. They gang up on each other.
Yeah.
Whoever's been the most cocky that day.
Tribal.
Yes, and it's so much fun. So yes, that's another good one. So those games and cards. You know, why, like as a family, why don't we learn how to play poker or chess or those games can be really. The problem with chess is it's 1-to-1, so it's less.
Yeah, but the game thing is also. I mean, I remember in lockdown when we had some stuff with my eldest back, and there wasn't a massive amount of extra energy around. We kind of were stagnating. And I remember suggesting games and nobody wanted to play, and I didn't really want to play. It was like, oh, we probably should be playing games. Everyone's playing games. It's lockdown. And then
We've all been there.
Yeah, I remember just going, do you know what? I can't really be asked. Let's just watch telly. And then when, then we had more energy afterwards, and, the world looked a bit different and we didn't have any back problems and all of the things that were weighing down, then it's fun. And then everyone's like, yeah, let's play. So you pick your moments.
Yes. And I love Jess's comment because she said they love going caravanning and everybody in the family pulls together and they all got their little jobs. And she said, no matter how much they've been bickering when they all go caravanning. And then she wrote back and said, actually, it was awful. And I felt so sorry for poor Jess because my heart was there for her. I was thinking, that sounds great. But it can really work. So it just sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. Move on and just try again. And I have found that I think what we do as adults we think, okay, there's the jobs and then there are the teenagers. And we forget that when they were little, they really wanted to do the jobs. And there's a sort of disconnect as they become teenagers with, well, what do you mean you want me to do a job? Yeah. But I think part of that is because we say, right, you go and do this cleaning the loo, and you think they're going to like it. But actually, I've started doing projects. So, for example, we have this little square pond that's left over and it's horrible and it's full of weed but it's got some lily pads in it. And we've got another pond that's a natural pond nearby. And I called my daughter out and said, oh, please, can you help me? And we pulled this massive lily that was all grass growing into it and pulled it all apart, cleaned it down and put it into the other pond. She told me, I love that, Mummy.
Amazing.
That was so much fun because we were working together and every time she sees that lily pad, now she knows that we did that.
Yeah, that's
and
lovely.
Also we plant seeds together. So I'll say, right, I bought these seeds. Let's go about planting them and we figure out where they're going to go. So anything where I think we underestimate the benefit of doing a job together.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And that they do want to know how to do stuff, but it's the way, if we tell them they've got to do it, it's not very appealing. But if you're going to even assembling a wardrobe or just anything where you put them in charge and say, hey, I'm your staff. How are we going to do this?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, my eldest, I remember teaching him how to do IKEA furniture and sort of presenting it to him as a life skill. Like, you need to know how to do this. And it's a bit like Lego, isn't he? He loves it.
Yes.
But it's also finding out what makes your kid tick. Like, if I want to do something with my eldest, then it usually involves food, preferably junk food, and then he'll pretty much come along.
Interesting.
My daughter likes going shopping, or some of the nicest times we've spent together are just lying in this cheap hammock I bought on Amazon. It's lovely. We just lie there and muck about. It doesn't have to.
Can I come? That sounds great.
And the dog tries to get in and gets out. It doesn't have to be like an activity per se. It can just be hanging out in the way that that your kid likes. My youngest boy is he's more friend oriented, but he loves playing board games actually, or he'll still dance in the kitchen. I really hope he's never going to hear this because he listens to grime music and he was trying to teach me how to dance to grime.
Now that would be a great thing. Whatever dance they're doing on TikTok or whatever, try and learn it. Yeah. Like, I love shuffle and I can't do it. I'm terrible.
Yeah.
But I just look at it and think there's so much joy in that.
Yeah.
So and it's hilarious for them. Or maybe not. Maybe they just think you're a loser if you try it. But it's worth a go.
It's fine in the kitchen, I find. Yes. If you start doing it in a traffic jam on the motorway, then you are not popular.
And I saw one woman on, she's a DJ actually, and I love her because I love her spirit. And she shuffle dances, and I love shuffle dancing. And she just got up and did a shuffle dance on a table in a ski resort and said, at the end of it, she said, I hope this encourages all of you to try this, get up on a table and dance. And I thought, yeah, I would be off that table on the floor within seconds trying that. It just wouldn't look good. And my family would never talk to me again. Yeah. Never again. My daughter has actually looked up at me dancing on a table and saying, Mummy, can you just get down right now?
Yeah, please.
So
never do that again.
And then you're winning, right? So, and Jess also said that her family love having guests around, so they love doing that whole the family. Let's plan for it. What are you going to cook? How should we decorate the house? What should just these sort of get together things that feel really joyous.
Yes, and also maybe just having a look at our expectation can be helpful as well, because we often have this expectation that, we ought to be doing family stuff. We hear other people, even just the stuff that we have just said, that, I do stuff with my teens. I do not do that every day.
No.
And, it's an occasion thing, and we don't have to be doing this stuff all the time. So, not feeling bad if our teenagers tell us to get lost when we come
absolutely,
but just grabbing the moments when and if they arrive.
No, and actually the natural thing that we've slipped into is my older daughter really enjoys cooking, and she loves that I allow her to experiment in the kitchen, and so we're in the kitchen together. I'll cook things, she'll cook things, and we're just side by side working together. Lovely. And the other daughter, I've now started walking the dogs to the train station that she comes to when she comes back from school, and we walk all the way home, and it's just chatter.
And it's very that in the morning with my kids.
You do.
It's just for 5 minutes.
With the kid who's running ahead and the kid who's behind.
And then I walk with him and he's dropped something or has to go back for something. And the dog doesn't know who to walk with.
That's really funny. We'd love to hear any other suggestions, because this is a continuous problem for everybody, I think. It's the means of connection. So sometimes you have to generate these things. Sometimes you can fall into them naturally. But they're always worth pursuing.
Yeah, and if you're not sure what to do, sometimes just doing what are you doing? Can I watch?
Yeah.
And if you're gaming, can I watch? Can I join in?
Yes.
And they might go no, they might go yeah, and then you kind of can have a conversation about it.
Yes. Or just whatever series they're watching on TV, just sit down and watch it with them, so that you've got something that you've shared together. Yeah. Well, that's it for now. We'd love to hear about your favourite games and activities that can be shared with teenagers. Next time, we'll talk about teenage anxiety. There have been reports of a massive rise in it. So what's behind it? What can you do as a parent? Also, setting rules in your home. How do you go about it when dealing with a teenager who's challenging them? And what consequences should you put in place if your teenager breaks them?
Well, I can't wait to discuss that one.
I think it's a really fun one. And I do think, looking at the way governments work, whenever they try and put new laws in place, they always have to think about how people are going to skirt their way around the laws. So it's a natural human tendency to look at a rule and think, how do I get what I want out of that?
And we have a tendency, don't we? There are 4 tendencies. Maybe we can talk about them.
Oh, have we? You can tell me all about that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
There are particular rule breakers.
I want to hear about that. That's going to be next week. That's it for now. We hope we've given you some helpful advice. Good luck with the negotiating who has those talks with your teens. Goodbye.
Goodbye for now.